to another episode of Frogs Insider presented by the Flying Tea Club. Jamie Plunkett here with Melissa Treebwasser. Back again, episode number 102. We've crossed the century mark. We are moving on to the next 100 episodes. Let's see, Melissa, I think I was trying to do some math the other day because you and I have been doing a podcast together pretty much consistently since 2015.
Yeah, sounds about right.
So 9 years, 9 football seasons, 10 football seasons. We've probably done 600, 700 podcast episodes together. Right.
Yeah, something close to the percentage of my daily salt intake I got yesterday. Probably something like that, yeah.
And I still think that all of the different iterations of the show that we've done, this is the first one where we've actually hit 100 episodes.
It's probably fair.
We've renamed it and we've rebranded a couple times. Obviously, we moved away from Frogs of War to another place, and now we're here with Frogs Insider and DCTF. And I just thought it was really interesting. I was having that conversation with someone the other day, and it's like, first of all, really cool that we've been doing this for as long as we have, and then second of all, kind of funny that this is, I think, the first time we've actually hit 100 episodes.
I will say, I think it's fair to say this is the best that we've done as far as quality of product, consistency of messaging, and just, like you said, kind of sticking with the thematic element here. So I think we've shown growth, and I'm proud of us. I'm going to pat us on the back.
Let's go. And talk about quality and of the product while I'm sitting here with a mustache, you know.
It's growing. Okay, I have to ask you this question. You are a married man. Your wife is an absolute delight, a lovely, lovely woman.
Yes.
How is she feeling about the stash?
So she saw your poll. She doesn't have Twitter, so she didn't vote, or she would have voted for like the sour candy or something. Sure.
Did she know going into that this was a possibility?
Yes. Okay. So she knew that this was a possibility. She had seen me with a mustache once before in my life, and it was my bachelor party.
Yeah.
Me and 13 buddies of mine, or I guess 12 buddies of mine, went to Vegas for my bachelor party back in May of 2011, and we all shaved into mustaches for that trip. Thought it was hilarious. We all had suits and bow ties on with our mustaches. Real nerd stuff, right?
Sure.
And so that was the only time she's ever seen me with a mustache. She did not like it. Full disclosure here, she doesn't like the full beard much either.
Really?
She's not. No, she likes the goatee. That is her facial hair of choice.
Really?
For me. Mm-hmm. And so if you look back at our wedding photos, back when we were still dating, I had a goatee, and that's hilarious to say out loud now because I've had a beard for so long.
Yeah.
But she's grown accustomed to the beard. We'll say that.
Yeah.
And
she accepts it.
She accepts the beard. She I wouldn't go so far as to say appreciates the beard, although she's seeing my chin for the first time in 4 years.
So maybe she's missing the beard. Yeah.
Misses the beard a little bit now. But she had a book club on Monday night. And so I went to work on Monday, hadn't shaved yet. She went to book club on Monday night. I put the boys to bed and then went into our bathroom and shaved into a mustache. And I went to bed before she got home. So she didn't see the mustache until we're up on Tuesday morning, getting the kids ready for school, getting lunches made, all this other kind of stuff. And she takes one look, and the face that she made, this utter look of disdain.
Oh, God. I'm so sorry, Skylar. I'm so sorry.
Brutal. I think, so for the first few days, she just kind of looked and shook her head every time she saw it. The boys both think it's hilarious.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Nolan looked at me and goes, "Dad, where did your beard go?" And then goes, "Can you get it back?"
Nothing like the love of a child.
Yeah, six-year-old passion right there. But it's honestly growing on me a little bit.
You want to keep it, don't you?
I shaved this morning.
Yeah.
Around it, to kind of just clean up the rest of my face, and I think we're just gonna kind of. This is a hard launch for the mustache. I think.
Wow.
Into perpetuity now.
It's absolutely grown on me. I think it's a good look for you.
Thank you.
I think the beard is the full beard is my favorite of your looks. Having never seen you fully shaven, and I don't think I've ever seen you in a goatee, or if I have, it's been years and I don't remember. But
it was like 2010, 2009. I don't think
so no, I've never seen the goatee, but I think when you tire of the stash, or when local authorities require you to grow in more facial hair, I think you should go goatee and then decide if you want to go full beard. I mean, I don't know that people do goatees in 2024. Someone can.
Not really.
Yeah. So again, let's just continue. Let's make Skylar happy. Let's redeem ourselves for the stash.
Yeah.
Let's go goatee and then go back to full beard when the weather eventually gets cold, which it's supposed to be 81 degrees today. So what are we doing here? But it's fine.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. It was like 48 on Tuesday morning, the first day without a beard in 4 years, and I walked outside and my face was like, this is not good.
Not it.
This is not what we want to see. Hey, but let's talk about you for a second.
Yeah.
Because the mustache is my payout for our subscriber goal. You did the salt chip challenge live on YouTube last night after the Arizona game, and it was a trip. It was a journey that we went on. It wasn't a long journey, but we covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time.
So true.
How are you feeling now, roughly 12 hours after having eaten the saltiest chip on the planet?
Not great. Not particularly well. But I'm here. I won't go into detail describing some of the way my body has continued to take a journey here since arriving home, because no one needs to know about that. But there have been some things that have been unusual. I'll say it that way. Again, don't want to go if you know.
How many times did you wake up in the middle of the night to drink water?
4 or 5. And the thing I will say is I never once had to pee after chugging water, because my body was just like, please hydrate me. And it doesn't help that after we did the salt chip challenge, we went to Buff Bros with our good friend Steven Johnson and drank beer and I ate loaded potatoes. So I just continued to like pour salt into my system.
Yeah.
But I got up, I drank some electrolytes. I took a little bit of, took some supplements here. I worked out. I sweated some of that out, which I thought was good. Like I was like, I got to run today. This cannot be a bike day. It's got to be a run day, because I've got to get some of that salt out of my pores. There have been some issues, but not anything too terrible. But my stomach doesn't feel quite right, and I will be monitoring my salt intake for the next few days just to make sure that I don't kill myself. But it was I didn't enjoy it. It was terrible, and I think the worst part of it is, and I don't know if it was like this when you did the hot chip too, but when you look, your mind sees a chip. Mm-hmm. You're expecting a certain texture, and when I bit in, it felt like I was biting into wax paper.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It was a lot of chewing.
That's not something that happened with the one chip challenge, because it was really heavily dusted. Like, when you get a Fuzzies chip that has too much fuzzy dust on it.
No such thing as too much, but yeah.
Sure, but it's kind of caked on there. That was the texture of the spicy chip.
Yeah,
and so it was still very chip-like. It crunched. It broke apart. It was easy to chew.
This did not break apart. Did not crunch whatsoever.
Just brutal.
And I had to chew for such a long time, so it just felt like that was in my mouth for an extensive amount of time.
Yes.
But we made it. I got through it. It was everything. I hope it was everything people hoped it would be.
It was very funny.
I hope it lived up to the billing. I hope it was worth the significant investment. Guys, go watch the YouTube channel. We need to pay Jamie back for that very expensive salt chip. Please watch the videos. Yeah, it's illegal in the United States. I spent a good portion of the third quarter of the game Saturday Googling, could you die from the salt chip challenge, just to see. Went and saw our friend Clark on the sideline, and when I looked over, he just made the motion of somebody eating when he saw me, and then I went and gave him a really hard time for that, because it was his idea. So shout out to Clark. So all in all, quite the experience, and a good finale to the season in the Dan Jenkins press box at Amon G. Carter Stadium.
A nice way to cap out the final home game. Nice way to go out celebrating a 49-28 TCU victory over Arizona. We're going to break that game down on this episode. We're going to get into a little bit of shooty hoops conversation. We're going to talk about the end of TCU soccer's season coming to a close a little bit before we thought it would. But before we get into all of that, we should, now that we are 9.5 minutes into this thing, mention our presenting sponsor, the Flying T Club. The Flying T Club is TCU's NIL collective. They're the only NIL collective for the Horned Frogs. They support over 110 TCU student athletes, and they partner with a variety of organizations in and around the city of Fort Worth to make our city better. If you want, you can go to flyingtclub.com to see all of the work that they're doing, the student athlete stories of who they're working with, and you can see how you can get involved, whether that's through an individual contribution for which you will receive priority points and a tax write-off because the Flying T Club is a 501c3 nonprofit. You can see about corporate partnerships if you own your own business and you want to partner with the Flying T Club that way. And you can see how you can also partner with all of the organizations that the Flying T Club works with around the city, including places like the Presbyterian Night Shelter, which is one of my personal favorites. They do a lot of really good work with the homeless community here in Fort Worth, especially the young children that are experiencing homelessness. So really cool organization, the Flying T Club. Go to flyingtclub.com today to see how you can get involved. Also, big shout out to Dave Campbell's Texas Football, our host, our network group, our people, our
Overlords.
circle, overlords, kind of. Craven actually said something nice on Twitter about TCU yesterday. I almost fell out of my chair.
I missed it. This is upsetting.
He said TCU has an elite wide receiver room, I believe is what he said, which he isn't wrong.
He's not wrong.
We're going to talk about some of those wide receivers in their incredible post-game press conference.
Oh, my God.
This,
highlight of the day.
But yes, Dave Campbell's Texas Football, the Republic of Football Network. You can go anywhere you get your podcasts and search Republic of Football Network. You will see that feed pop up. It will include our show. It will include shows for every D1 program in the state of Texas. That's a lot, but you'll be one of the most informed Texas football fans, state of Texas football fans, if you listen to that show and that feed regularly. If that's too much for you, if you want the Frogs Insider content only, plus a couple shows that don't make it on to the Dave Campbell's feed every week, just search Frogs Insider everywhere you get your shows. You'll see our feed pop up. Hit that subscribe button, leave us a rating, and then go over to the YouTube channel, hit subscribe there where you can watch our shows on video form. If you want to see all of the glory of the mustache, you can go see that there. You can go watch Melissa do the chip challenge there as well. And it also includes post-game press conferences for football, basketball, soccer. Volleyball's coming up soon. All of the things. Baseball in the spring. We're going to have coverage like nobody else for baseball as well. Get over there to the YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button as well. All right.
Cool. That's a lot of business. Yeah.
I think that's all the business, though. We got it done in, I talked for a little bit. All right.
It happens. You know what else? Who else took care of business on Saturday afternoon?
TCU football.
TCU football 100% took care of business. Absolutely dispatching Arizona State. It was a little bit back and forth in that first quarter, but it was pretty evident that TCU was in control pretty early in this one. I loved the way the offense executed. Other than a couple of small little mistakes. I mean, I think we nitpicked 3 Josh Hoover passes in the press box that we thought, and one of them was really bad. But in a day where there was so much chaos across the sport of college football, it was really refreshing to see TCU for a second consecutive game just absolutely take care of business against an opponent that they should have taken care of business for. Arizona has one of, if not the best wide receivers in the country, probably the first, or depending on what you want to classify Travis Hunter as a wide receiver, an athlete, a CB, whatever, he'll be probably the first true singular wide receiver taken off the board, and Tatoria I think I said that right, Tet McMillan, who was as good as advertised, was an absolute blast to watch, especially because he couldn't really impact the game's result. He was great. Noah Fita had some really nice moments. That was a guy that a lot of people coming into the season thought would be the best quarterback in the Big 12, but he struggled this season. But Arizona's got, I think they've got an offensive lineman that's probably going to go in the first round of the NFL draft. They are a talented team, and TCU just absolutely stepped on their necks and extinguished them pretty early on.
Yeah, the lineman that you mentioned got hurt, I think, in the third quarter there. So as things were getting away from Arizona, he stepped out of the game. I don't think I saw him return. So TCU comes out, and right out of the gate, they kick off to Arizona. First play of the game, Bud Clark makes a great
My camera
read.
wasn't even focused.
Makes a great read on the first target of the game to Tet McMillan, and he cuts the route on a deep out and picks the ball off, sets TCU up on the Arizona 37, and TCU goes in and scores a touchdown. They get up 14-0 before the offense starts to stall a little bit with a pair of 3-and-outs that were sandwiched by a touchdown and 2 field goals for Arizona to make it 14-13. And so now you're thinking, okay, well, TCU had all of this great momentum in the first quarter. Arizona's kind of chipped away at it, come back a little bit. With Tyler Loop, by the way, that kicker, for Arizona, who I was
Yeah.
watching hit 70 yarders in warmups.
You
legitimate
have
70 yarders.
you have a crush on Tyler Loop, which
If
is
the
fine. I
Dallas
support
Cowboys,
it.
if the
Yeah.
Dallas Cowboys didn't already have the best kicker in the NFL, I would want the Dallas Cowboys to draft this kid, because apparently that's all the Dallas Cowboys are allowed to be good at, is kicking field goals. That I digress. He's great. He kicked a 53-yarder that would have been good from 70. He kicked a 40-something yarder that would have been good from 70 to help Arizona kind of chip into TCU's lead a little bit. And then a pretty important sequence. We talk about the middle eight a lot, Melissa. Not necessarily on this show, but it's a conversation that happens around college football. That's the last 4 minutes of the second quarter and the first 4 minutes of the third quarter as being a really critical moment, a critical juncture in every football game. And can you control the middle eight is a question that coaches ask a lot. So TCU gives up a field goal with, let's see here. TCU gives up a field goal with 1 minute and 55 seconds left in the second quarter to see their lead dwindle down to 14-13. They get the ball back. They are marching down the field, and then all of a sudden, Josh Hoover takes a sack. Arizona ran a couple of blitzes at TCU that Josh Hoover really struggled with. They came off the left edge, and there was one where, on this particular one, Jeremy Payne gets over, picks up one of the blitzers, but Bless Harris turns away from the defensive end and goes to help Colton Deary at guard and just lets a defensive end run completely free. He crushes Josh Hoover for a sack, first career sack for this kid. And then all of a sudden TCU's in 3rd and 18. So you're thinking, okay, well, TCU's probably a little bit out of field goal range at this point. They're probably going to take a 14-13 lead into the half. Hoover finds Savion for a conversion on 3rd and 18. I think it was like a 22, 23-yard gain. Puts them down near the red zone. And then another sack. And then another blitz, the same blitz off the left edge. Bless Harris misses another block. Hoover, running around, scrambling, eventually throws it away, gets called for intentional grounding, and now it's 3rd and 25. And once again, you're kind of fringe field goal range.
Yeah.
Hoover, on 3rd and 25, finds J.P. Richardson for a 24-yard gain. JP goes up in double coverage and makes a really nice
unbelievable catch. Yeah.
Gets out of bounds. He made a couple really fantastic catches on the day.
Yeah.
Great day for JP Richardson. He had over 100 yards receiving, his first receiving touchdown of the year. And then 4th and 1, TCU does not substitute. They have one timeout left. 16 seconds left, I believe, in the half at this point. They have one timeout. They don't substitute. Arizona substitutes, and the officiating crew stop, like, you know, when the umpire like goes up and like doesn't allow the offense to snap. He's standing there doing that, and the play clock is running down. TCU has not. Again, the umpire is only allowed to go up there if the offense subs to allow the defense an opportunity to sub. And TCU's had substitution issues this year, but the umpire goes up when TCU did not sub, and then allows Arizona to sub while the play clock's running down. TCU has to use their last time out of the half. Sonny Dykes is rightfully losing his mind at this point. Because TCU's lining up to try and go for it on 4th and 1. He calls a timeout, has his words with the ref. TCU settles in. They go for it on 4th down. Direct snap to Savion Williams, who does what he's done from the Wildcat all season long. 20-yard touchdown run. You have excellent photos. I used one as my game, the header for my article over at Horned Frog Blitz.
Don't even look at Savion in the photos.
Look in the background.
Everything going on behind him.
Shout out to a guy we've already mentioned. Clark is in this photo. Shout out to Mark Cohen for his appearance in this photo as well. That touchdown for Savion Williams was his second rushing touchdown of the day. Puts TCU up 21-13 going into halftime. And then the other half of that middle eight, TCU comes out. They get the ball to start the third quarter. They march right down the field. Trent Battle gets his second rushing touchdown of the day. And all of a sudden, you're up 28-13 when it was a 14-13 lead. They score another one. They 21 unanswered points to get up 35-13. And that was really when it felt like TCU had fully taken control of this game. Arizona never got closer than 2 touchdowns again in the second half as TCU goes to 7-4 on the season, 5-3 in Big 12 play. So really impressive win. Nice response when Arizona gave them a little bit of trouble there in the second quarter. And we were having this debate, Melissa. What would this team's record be if they had been using Savion Williams in this way from the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at what this has done, and we talked about it last night before the Salt Chip, that putting Savion in the backfield has not only finally gotten you able to convert on 3rd and short and 4th and short because he's just been so automatic in that role. It lets you get Eric McAllister on the field more. He has been excellent as kind of that 3rd, 4th option at the wide receiver position between him and JP and Jack Bash, who we haven't even mentioned yet, secured his 1,000-yard season. I think only the 6th player in TCU history to have done so. But it gets more of your good players on the field at the same time, which makes it so difficult for the defense. We've seen Savion catch passes out of the backfield. We've seen him throw the ball out of the backfield. It's been such a key to unlocking the full ability of this offense. If they do this from the beginning or they do this ahead of the UCF game, TCU probably does not lose that game. I mean, they had such a huge lead. They probably did not lose that game. I think it gives you a whole different vibe going into that Houston game. You probably don't drop that one at home. I'll say the Baylor game is probably still what it was. I mean, give credit to Baylor. That was a good, entertaining back and forth game. It was TCU's defense not being able to get stops late, not the TCU offense not really doing their job. Savion did drop that wide open touchdown pass that will haunt me for all eternity. But yeah, so I think you're looking at a completely different scenario going into the last week of the season with maybe just one conference loss and a berth in the Big 12 championship in your control, which is obviously not the scenario that TCU's in now. I think that with Utah losing, TCU's fully out of the chance to make the Big 12 now. But it's frustrating because you think back to what could have been, but it's also encouraging in the sense of that the offensive coordinator, that the head coach figured out a way to make their team better. And they were willing to do something a little bit unconventional. They were willing, Savion as a senior, an NFL prospect, was willing to say, sure, I'm going to go take another 10, 15 hits from a running back position. I'm going to block, I'm going to pass block, I'm going to do all of these things, even though I'm looking at a professional future because that's what will help my team win. And his attitude and his unselfishness in that role has probably raised his draft profile because now all of a sudden you're looking at a Deebo Samuel type guy as opposed to just a flat out wide receiver who I still think is going to test his way into the late 1st or early 2nd round at the combine. Like he's going to be such a combine freak. It's and we've talked about this before. We're going to talk about the what ifs and the disappointment and the happiness, whatever we feel about the scope of the season at the end of the season. So I don't really want to jump into that, but it does kind of give you that what might have been feeling had they discovered this as an option a little bit earlier.
It does, and I agree with your Savion analysis of him being willing to make that adjustment is equally as important as the coaching staff going to that as an adjustment. Shout out to Sonny, shout out to Kendall and that offensive staff for getting creative with the solution because there was a clear and obvious issue with the running game. Still kind of is outside of Savion Williams, although it's hard to say that on a day where TCU had 6 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, right.
They've gotten better since the first bye week, I think is the biggest thing to note, and that comes from a running back standpoint. And frankly, we've given the offensive line its fair share of criticism this year. They, outside of a couple moments from the left side of the line on Saturday, they've looked really good in this 5-game stretch.
Yeah.
They have.
They've definitely gotten better.
They've definitely improved. I haven't really seen bad things from Ben Taylor Whitfield in a while, which gives you a lot of hope for the future tackle spot for him because he's only a sophomore. I've been high on Colton Deary and James Brockermeyer for the last couple of weeks as well. Still some holes there, but overall I think the unit has improved. Melissa, you mentioned Jack Besh, 3 catches for 25 yards on the day. His 3rd and final catch of the day was an 8-yard gain on 3rd and 10, so TCU has to punt. But it also pushed him above the 1,000-yard mark for the season. He's the 5th Horned Frog ever to accomplish the feat. Josh Doxson did it twice. So you have Josh Doxson who did it twice.
5th person. Got it.
Josh Doxson did it twice. Quentin Johnson did it. Jalen Rager did it. Reggie Harrell did it. And now Jack Besh are the 5 receivers to have ever recorded a 1,000-yard season in TCU history. Really, if you had said before the season a player on TCU's team is going to be a 1,000-yard receiver this year, he would have come up in the conversation. But I don't necessarily think folks would have pointed at him as being the guy. I think everyone would have maybe assumed that it would have been Savion.
Yeah. Or Jeff. I think we all thought JP would be. I think we'll have to go back and look at our preseason predictions, but I mean, I thought JP would lead the team in receiving yards because of what a safety blanket he was. So yeah, I mean, Jack, and because there were so many unknowns about Jack too because of his injury history too.
Yeah. Yeah, but he's just what a fantastic season that he's had. That third catch came in the second quarter, and then he didn't catch a pass the rest of the game. But still, I mean, if you want to talk about a physical guy, go back and watch that 30-yard run that Savion Williams had in the second half where he starts going to the right and then cuts it all the way back to the left. He gets a nice block from Josh Hoover, and then you see Jack Besh pushing his corner. You remember that scene from Blindside where Michael Orr blocks the guy all the way over the fence out of the back of the end zone? That looked like what Jack Besh was trying to do to this DB. Like he had moved him like 50 yards downfield, almost to the end zone, as Savion was running behind him. So
God, he's
really
gonna
cool.
get drafted by the Eagles, isn't he? Like, God, he's got like Eagles or Steelers written all over him. Like one of those teams that needs a guy that can catch the ball, that can block, that's willing to block, that's big and physical. He is going to be a 5th or 6th round pick that has a 10-year NFL career, and it's going to be for a team that we want to hate.
I don't think he lasts until the 5th or 6th round. I think he could.
You think a little bit earlier?
Guy.
I hope so. I think he deserves it.
I think he could. Oh, could he be late day 2? Maybe. We'll see. I don't know. But God, just send him to like, I don't know.
I'd take him with the Niners.
No, you guys have too much fun stuff already.
Yeah, the window has closed in San Francisco. I'm saying it now.
You got Ricky Pearsall. Chill. Okay, give me him. I want him on the Cowboys.
No, you don't. You like him too much. He's too good of a kid. He's too wonderful of a person.
That's true.
Send him to New Orleans. Let's send him to New. I feel like that'd make him really happy.
I mean, yeah, it would make him really happy. But do you really want Derek Carr throwing you the football?
He won't be there for long.
Here's a compromise. Send him to the Texans.
Oh, I like that. Get him in South Texas, a little closer to Louisiana. Okay. Jack, we got you, buddy. We got you. Don't worry. But we don't have to send him yet. We've got one more regular season game. We'll see a bowl season. It's going to be interesting to see who opts out. And I'm going to support any potential pro prospect for TCU opting out 100%. This season has been such a roller coaster. They have fought their tails off here over the last, 5-6 games. If they need to opt out to go protect themselves for the future. Like if Savion plays, I'm going to walk down to the sideline. I'm going to yell at him. I'm going to say, Savion, go sit down, buddy. I'm going to take his helmet. I'm going to hide it. That man does not need to be playing in a bowl game.
I don't think he'd be the first person to try and do that.
No, I'm sure I wouldn't.
I think his own coaching staff might help him make that
I would
decision.
Hope so.
Speaking of Savion, really quickly,
Yeah.
before we pivot to your next point, Justin Spears, Arizona Daily Star, ESPN Tucson Radio, guy we got to meet this week doing some stuff on the podcast. I went on his radio show, met him in person at the game on Saturday. Really good dude. He sent this quote over from Brent Brennan post game about Savion Williams. Quote, "Where did they find that guy? Oh my gosh, what a stud. He's so powerful and so strong. I thought we had him dead to rights on that 4th and 1, and he was able to fall forward for the first down." That was, of course, not the 20-yard rushing touchdown. Another 4th and 1 play where Savion bullied his way through, I think, 3 Arizona defenders to fall forward for 2 yards and get the first down. So Arizona's head coach impressed with Savion Williams. Where did he come from? That would be Marshall, Texas.
I was just gonna say it was really fun. You mentioned at the beginning the post-game press conference where Mark Cohen surprised us by letting 3 senior wide receivers, Jack Besh, J.P. Richardson, and Savion Williams, show up to the presser. Savion's birthday was earlier this week, so Jack made us all sing him happy birthday. It's probably the worst rendition of happy birthday he's ever heard. But it was really fun to see all 3 of those guys. I asked them about each of their unique journeys. Jack, obviously a Louisiana kid coming to TCU as a transfer after such a strong freshman campaign at LSU. JP doing the intra-conference transfer. And then Savion, who has been here from the beginning of his collegiate career and stuck it out through a coaching change, through asked to do so many roles, being behind so many talented guys, waiting his turn to be the number 1 option for wide receiver, and then finding out that he only has 596 yards receiving this season. He's probably got almost as many rush yards as he does receiving yards. In fact, I probably should have looked at that. They don't have his rush stats. Oh yeah, they do. 312 rushing yards, 596. So he has a chance to he probably will end up with 1,000-yard season, but And it was great to say, for Jack is always speaks so well about the brotherhood of the team and the family feel. And it was really neat to see those three guys cutting up, having a great time together, but then also talking so emotionally on senior day about what TCU has meant to them. And Savion we got a different Savion. I can't remember who you compared him to yesterday, because I'm old and I ate a salt chip. But he came in with his dark glasses and was just cutting up and having a good time. And it's probably the loosest and most relaxed that we've seen Savion this year. Your mic is off, Jamie, just FYI.
Sorry, my family just got home from church. We're recording this a little earlier in the day. They were crashing down the hallway. I think there's safety in numbers, and so the fact that he was there with two of his buddies opened him up a little bit. He did have the sunglasses on, a little layer of protection there from the folks that he was looking at. He was definitely in a way in the postgame, but they all were.
They were so happy.
There's some joy in the success that they've had recently, because they are 4-1 in their last 5 games. They have a chance to get to 8-4 in the regular season and go play in a pretty decent bowl game. Yeah. They get a chance to have more practices with their teammates and their brothers. They have a chance to spend a little bit more time together beyond the end of this regular season on Saturday, right? Because if they lose the last 2 games, if they're fighting for bowl eligibility, Saturday could be it. And now they have the guarantee, the promise of 4 or 5 more weeks together. I think that means a lot to these guys. Yeah. After all that they've been through. I mean, Savion's been here the whole time. Jack talked a lot about coming from LSU, where his whole family was, where he knew everybody, to a place he didn't know anyone at TCU. And JP, similar story, transferring from Oklahoma State down here as well. Those guys have grown really close over the last several years. And now they get to spend a little bit more time together. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really fun, and it speaks a lot to what Sonny Dykes has been telling us from the beginning of the season, that this was a special group of people, and maybe at times it didn't feel like the football matched the expectations, and again, we'll get to that. But Sonny never stopped believing that this group of people as players would find a way to come together and figure it out, and he's been proven right over these last 5 games. He never stopped believing that this group liked each other, and he spoke to it, and he said just that there was such a different tenor when it came to the unity of this group compared to a season ago, and that in 2023 they never quite figured it out. They never quite came together, and he didn't say they kind of gave up on each other, but that's kind of what it felt like from the outside, and he's kind of talked around that a little bit, whereas this team never stopped believing in each other and never stopped believing they could be the kind of football team that they ultimately wanted to be. Again, there's disappointments, there's what ifs, whatever else, but the way this group is playing right now, you're going to lose a lot. You lose a lot of talent in this senior class for sure, but you feel like they've done the groundwork and laid the foundation for the scaffolding, not just as a talent perspective, but from a leadership and a community and a unity perspective, where you hope that now will carry on into the future. And with Josh Hoover ostensibly coming back as kind of the glue guy within all of that, you feel really confident that TCU can kind of get back to where the expectations should be for this program a year from now. And around the talent they go, whoever they go out and find, they're going to have to replace some great talent at wide receiver especially, but that they can go out and get guys that want to play here, that want to play in this system, that want to be a part of a brotherhood that really does sound like it was truly something special.
Yes, I fully agree. You talked about the seniors. 31 were recognized during senior day, and I was told that some folks opted out of being recognized but probably won't be back next year either. So that is more than a third of your roster, or roughly a third of your roster recognized on the senior day. Will be interesting. Will be interesting to see how TCU approaches the portal. They have a really nice high school class coming in. They flipped an Arizona kid this week, Terry Shelton. He was their highest rated recruit. He's a 4-star wide receiver out of Ranchview, I believe. Really talented kid. He's been shooting up the recruiting rankings this fall.
Huge.
And he was on campus to watch TCU beat the team that he was formerly committed to on Saturday, which is kind of a fun little nugget there. Yes, I mean, they got a lot of work to do. And Sonny mentioned that in the postgame about having to find a group to replace all of these seniors, and that's going to take some really hard work. But I think at this point, evaluating the first 3 years, I know we're going to do this long on a longer show after the season. I think we're starting to see a track record for Sonny
Sure.
in the portal. And we can talk about what that track record is once the season is over. But I think it's generally positive.
Yeah. There's a lot of reason to say, you're not going to just go out and replace Savion, Jack, JP, et cetera, et cetera. But there's not an expectation that there should be a significant drop off like we saw from 22 to 23 because the intangibles are in place and we believe in the ability to identify and recruit talent. And I said, I don't worry about recruiting offensive skill positions whatsoever at TCU.
No.
They will be able to go out and get guys because, again, look at what they're doing. You want to be a part of that. But I do, the lines are going to determine the success of this program in the future. And like you mentioned earlier, there are some young guys, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that there's reason to be excited about. And defensive side of the ball, when they're at full health, Marcus Steele played on Saturday, Cooper McDonald played on Saturday, and all of a sudden that looked like a completely different unit. And so at full strength and with guys coming back from injuries next year too, there is reason to be hopeful. Yeah, Cade Bennett coming back. I mean, that's going to be huge. So there's definitely reason to be hopeful. They're going to have to spend wisely in the portal, I think, is in the trenches. But I think that we've seen that, again, TCU is a place that good players want to play, and they're not going to go out and recruit, super expensive, great guys, but they'll recruit intentionally and fill gaps and bring guys that fit not just the program on the field, but the locker room culture as well.
Yeah, I think that we're going to see a shift in their portal approach this season because of what they've been doing at the high school level the last couple of years.
Yep.
And yeah, you're right about skill position players on offense because, I mean, realistically, I think we can start talking about, if we haven't already, Malcolm Kelly is one of the best, probably top 3 wide receivers coaches in the country.
Yeah.
Like legitimately. There are only 3 schools. If Savion sneaks into the back of the first round, there will have been only 3 schools in the country that can say they've had at least 3 first-round wide receiver picks in the last 5 years. And TCU would be one of them. Ohio State would be another. The third, I believe, would be Oregon, but I'd have to go double-check on that as well.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Pretty strong company there for TCU's wide receivers coach and Malcolm Kelly. Melissa, let's move on, though, from this game. TCU will play Cincinnati at 6 p.m. on ESPN Plus this Saturday after Thanksgiving. Last game of the regular season, the Frogs 4-1 in their last 5 games. Cincinnati currently on a 4-game losing streak, crashing back to earth after we were a little surprised, I think, by how well the Bearcats have been playing. Lost last night to Kansas State by a lot.
Yeah,
I think last I saw the score was like 41-9 or something. Not a great showing for them. Last night, 41-15 was the final.
Okay. High of 35 in Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, on Saturday predicted.
It'll be chilly.
Yeah, high of 35, low of 21. So that, and Sonny did mention the interesting weather potentially for that game. So that will be a toughness check for a team that has gotten, I mean, it was cold in Utah, but it wasn't bad. Like, this team has gotten
like
very,
50s, right?
This team has gotten very fortunate when it comes to weather this year. So this will be the first time that there'll be some inclement weather to impact potentially the overall gameplay. Cincinnati obviously built to be successful in that, so it'll be a tough test for TCU, but at least they have kind of had to go on the road and play it a little bit of chilly before. So Jack Besh, I guarantee, shows up, no sleeves, jersey tucked up, and Johnny Hodges too. Both those guys will play a tough guy, and that's what we're here for.
Johnny's a Navy guy. He's
not
in
scared.
Annapolis. He's not
scared.
He's not scared of cold weather. No.
So yeah, it'll be interesting. You at this point now you kind of expect a win, right? Like, you kind of say, hey, this team is playing well. They're playing better than Cincinnati. They need to go up and take care of business on the road. And they've been a very good road team for the most part.
They have. Truly, they have. All right. That wraps football talk. Let's move on, Melissa. TCU soccer knocked out of the NCAA tournament on Friday afternoon with a 1-0 loss to Penn State. This was similar to the SFA game that they won 1-0 in a lot of ways. They dominated possession in this game. They had ample opportunity to score goals. They could not convert all of those opportunities into any goals. Realistically, you could look back at these 2 tournament games and think TCU could have scored 4 goals in each of them pretty easily.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case. They sneak away from SFA with a 1-0 win, and then they fall to Penn State 1-0. Defensively, they were excellent because this is a Penn State team that has scored 8 goals in their first round game. They come out, they only allow one. Goalkeeping, I thought, played incredibly well. You can't expect your goalkeeper to have a clean sheet every single game and expect to go very far in the tournament. So they won't get a shot at Florida State. That'll be Penn State's opportunity. Instead of
Penn State won't get a
TCU's.
shot at Florida State either because Florida State got upset by Vanderbilt, which makes this
I
even
missed that.
more disappointing.
Brutal.
Yeah, it was tough. I was able to watch most of the first half of that game, and I had to kind of check in intermittently in the second half. I think Penn State only managed 3 shots on goal. They actually scored almost immediately coming out of the halftime break, but it got called back for an offsides, and then they immediately turned around and scored again. And so the TCU defense was stout, as it has been. Like you mentioned, goalkeeping, Megan Plashko had a really good game. She just got beat once, and for TCU offense, I think was in the top 10 coming into that game in the country, or top 15. Just to see the offense kind of let them down those last couple of games is got to be frustrating for Eric Bell. And again, they didn't do anything wrong. That's just the way soccer goes. And I think I saw somebody talk about how this is what makes this sport so frustrating and why it's so hard to get it to catch on with American sports fans is, you mentioned it, TCU dominated time of possession. They dominated shots on goal. They were in double digits in shot opportunities. And just none of them went through. It just wasn't their day. And that's what's so unique about sports like soccer and hockey. You can do everything right and lose 1-0. And that's the Ron Washington, that's the way baseball go. I mean, that's just the way that this sport goes. And it is super, super disappointing, especially when you see Florida State get knocked out by Vandy and PKs. I'm fairly certain it opened up exactly how they needed it to for the Frogs to make that College Cup that they really felt that they had earned the opportunity to be a part of. Penn State's really good. They're really well coached. They have a national championship under this coach. They are in the NCAA tournament pretty much annually. But, once again, Eric Bell graduates some really critical players. You're going to lose Caroline Kelly, the grad transfer who led the conference in goals. Plashko's a grad transfer at goal as well. You're going to lose some really great players across the board in the midfield, but he's recruited exceptionally. He had a lot of freshmen that played really critical minutes throughout this season that will be back. I'm sure there'll be some transfer portal activity both ways. Bella Diorio comes back. She was excellent.
Comes back.
Seven
Patton
Castaigne
comes back.
Yeah,
they got some studs coming back.
Yeah, so you lose some really, really critical players. You lose some great leadership, but when you look across this team, you see that this is not the end of an era whatsoever. This is just the next step. And so getting over the hump and making the College Cup is something that is on Eric Bell's bucket list for sure. And he's had teams that were talented enough to do it. He just hasn't had things break his way. But this team was a joy to cover. They were a blast. They're so fun to watch. They are so exceptionally good. They play in a great conference, and so sad to see it end. I'm sure it's disappointing for the players and for the coaching staff. But Eric Bell's building a powerhouse in Fort Worth, and he continues to show that this team is just one opportunity away from playing for national championship. They've been within a whisker so many times it feels like, and I think this would have been a great opportunity for them to make that College Cup and go, and it just didn't happen.
It didn't happen. But like you said, this is an opportunity, I think, for a reload, not a rebuild.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how this roster, which is still going to be pretty young next year, how it begins to take shape this offseason. Melissa, moving on to hoops. Let's start with Tuesday. TCU men's basketball beats Alcorn State 71-48, a 23-point win. The Frogs did not cover. They were 32.5-point favorites in this game. They shot, let's see here. Let me get to my stats really quickly. They
shot not good. It would be by well, the first half they did. They didn't shoot badly.
They were 45.5% from the field overall, which isn't great. It's fine. Average, I would say. They were 11-32 from three-point range as a team, 34% from three. Not bad. We saw the second straight game of Brendan Wenzel really kind of figuring it out from range. He was 3 for 5. He finished with 9 points. You had Trey White lead the team in scoring for the third consecutive game. He had 14 points. Not the best shooting night from him, but he led the team in scoring. David Punch starting his second game of his career in place of an injured Ernest Uday, 10 points, 7 boards, 5 blocks.
5 blocks, yeah.
The issue here is the rebounding.
Yeah.
because they lost the rebounding battle. If you look at they lost the rebounding battle 36-33. They allowed, I believe it was 12 offensive rebounds to a team that has no players over the height of 6'8".
Yeah.
And this is an issue that we talked about in preseason. How are they going to rebound when they have a smaller front court? Because Ernest Uday is the tallest player on the team by far. You have true freshman Malik Diallo, who put some good minutes out there on the court against Alcorn State as well, but he's coming off of an ACL injury his senior year of high school, not ready yet for significant minutes at this level. David Punch is your backup center. He's also a true freshman, but he's also only about 6'8". He might be 6'9" on a good day. And we saw what it can look like when TCU isn't rebounding the ball, because Alcorn State hung around for much longer than they should have in this basketball game. And even though it was a 23-point win and TCU led by double digits, I think, for the entirety of the second half and most of the about the last 8 minutes of the first half as well, you're watching that game thinking, it didn't look like much was clicking.
Yeah. I always had small teams when I was coaching. I've always had small teams. And the thing that I've always emphasized with players is rebounding is about so much more than size. It's about so much of it is heart and hustle. And TCU does have pretty decent size at the wings and the guards, especially when they're playing lower level opponents. What they don't have right now, it feels like, is a total buy-in to rebounding as a team. And with Uday out especially, this has to be a 5-person rebounding effort. You can't really afford to have your trailing guard or anything like that. You need to be crashing the boards with impunity, especially on the defensive end of the floor. And they just aren't doing that yet. And that's, again, I think that's when you have a group of guys that haven't played together for very long. I mean, Jamie can talk about all of the 82 practices and all of that. It's so different when you're playing against other people. And you can't it's really hard to practice rebounding well within yourselves, because it's hard to be that physical against your teammates. Like, most teams just aren't very good at that. They don't practice at 100% because why would you against your own guys? So I think that I'm hoping that's something that will get better. He mentioned in the post game Tuesday that he thought that they'd come out with a better rebounding effort after getting so dominated down the stretch against Michigan, and that would ignite something in them, and it didn't. And so I think that there's talent on this team. I think there's some nice pieces. We talked about it in the preseason. We're seeing it come to roost. What's your backup plan if Uday gets hurt? They didn't really have one. I want to give Punch a ton of credit. I thought that he has shown so much growth throughout the first three weeks or so of this season. That is a kid where you look at and say, man, when he can play the 4 or the 5 in a small lineup, he's going to be a really good player. His instincts are great. He's pretty physical for a true freshman. Like, I like his physicality, his size. Like, he's pretty thick. So he's not getting pushed around. Like, Diallo's still a little thin. I think Diallo's done a really good job too when you factor in coming off the ACL injury, missing his senior season and the just really rounding into form right now. So I think those guys have done all that you can ask of them, and they've been pretty good players. But with Uday on the floor, this is a completely different team defensively and rebounding wise. And it shows. And it shows again. It showed Tuesday night against Alcorn State. I'm very worried about how some of these Big 12 teams will be able to expose them, especially on nights where they're not shooting. You said, okay, those are average. Yeah, absolutely. I think this team has to shoot above average to win games against better opponents. And we haven't seen them get into that offensive rhythm. They looked very disjointed most of Tuesday night. It was, I think you called it sleepy. I think I called it sleepy. I mean, it just was not a great effort. And I'm willing to accept that coming off of a disappointing loss on the road, sure. But at some point you run out of time to be able to not play your best basketball. And they're running up really close. I mean, they opened conference play at Arizona. No rest for the weary here in about a month. So
no, and they've had about a week off between that Alcorn State game and when they'll play. They play next on Thanksgiving Day. They go to Palm Springs, California for a little bit of a tournament. They play Santa Clara on Thursday. Then they play either Washington or Colorado State on Friday, depending on how the games on Thursday bear out. So 2 more opportunities to really start to figure out what your rotation looks like, get into more of an offensive rhythm, to practice some of what you're preaching, Melissa, about the team rebounding, getting the guards more involved in that area as well. And hopefully you have had enough time for Ernest Uday to work his way back into playing a little bit this week as well, because like you said, he's going to be so critically important. The TCU coaching staff made the conscious decision this offseason to put a lot of their eggs in the Ernest Uday basket. He has to be healthy. He has to be, or this team is not going to have much success this year.
And a back
he's gotta be
injury
healthy.
in November is not a great foreshadowing.
It's tough. He's
for
missed a lot of time. And Jamie talked about this after the game on Tuesday, saying, one of the biggest challenges for Ernest since he's been at TCU has been availability.
Yeah.
And so it was a risk that they took this offseason, and we're going to see how that risk plays out with whether or not Ernest is going to be able to overcome this injury this year. I don't say that to say that I think it's going to be an injury that keeps him out all year, but like you said, back injuries linger, and how he overcomes that is going to be critical for this team. On the other side of things, on the women's side, TCU, again, they also got off to a little bit of a sleepy start in their noon field trip game on Thursday against Incarnate Word.
What an experience
I wasn't there. You were there.
I was there.
High pitches, high screams all throughout were loudly heard on the broadcast. TCU wins this game 81-43. They got off to a little bit of a sleepy start there in the first quarter and then turned things on and really took care of business.
This is I'll say this is where I think this team has a chance to be special. It's not just winning that game against NC State. It's when they play a game that you look up, you go, man, they are not playing well, and they win by 40. Yeah. Like that to me is like a sign of a team that's really good when you're like, they're not shooting the ball well, nothing's going right. But wait a minute, they're up by 21. Okay, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, which is interesting because it's it's the same thing that we saw Tuesday with the men's team, right? Where it's like, gosh, they're just not playing well and they win by 23. But all of a sudden, someone just opened my door and walked away. So we're gonna stop real quick and close that.
I can vamp or we can cut this either way. You were starting before I interrupted you rudely, as I'm prone to do. You started talking about the noon start. Like you were going into that noon start, and I think that's one of the things Mark Campbell mentioned in the post game is that these games are weird, and he's not an excuses kind of coach whatsoever, but he will acknowledge when something is not normal. He was like, a noon tip, the students are kind of leaving for break. It's a kids game. It's all of these things, and so he did kind of acknowledge that there were reasons for their slow start. But you were saying about how the men got off that slow start Tuesday. They end up winning by 23. There's a massive gap between kind of the lower levels of women's basketball and the power conference levels. It's significantly larger than the men's side of that. And I think that's probably worth acknowledging. A 23-point win when the men's team plays poorly is one thing. A 40-point win when the women's team didn't play great is probably different for recognizable reasons.
Yeah, no, it totally is. And that's what I was getting at, is that I can hear a critique of this analysis being, you said something way different about the men when they also won by 20 plus points, blah blah blah. It's like, well, there are obvious differences in how these teams are playing right now.
Yeah,
and a sleepy start with 3 quarters followed of kicking their ass is different than a sleepy start where you lose the rebounding battle to Alcorn State.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's fair.
Significant differences there, which is why I think our conversations have a different tenor when it comes to women's basketball versus men's basketball right now. The women take on Idaho State this afternoon before they head to the Cayman Islands for a massive matchup against Notre Dame.
So excited.
On I believe that's also on Thanksgiving Day.
I think it's on
or is it on the
Friday? I think it's on Friday.
It is on Friday, November 29th
4
at 4 p.m.
CT.
Notre Dame is coming off of a 74-61 win over USC, the number 3 ranked team in the country. So this is, you think about the test that was NC State, and that was certainly a test. NC State, I think, looks a little different than they did last year in that Final Four run. And now you get another step up in tests. So that was the first barometer. This is the second barometer to really kind of gauge where TCU is. can you compete? Can you come away with the win against Notre Dame
On a neutral site,
on a
not at
neutral
home.
site, not at home? Like
Truly neutral.
This is a step up in test, I think, and so I'm really
sure.
intrigued. And then this leads into the biggest test
Yeah.
in a couple of weeks, December 8th against South Carolina. So
Y'all
I really like.
Be there. Be at
really-
Dickies. Pack that place for purple.
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry, what were you were saying? You really
You're good.
like.
I really like the way that Campbell has set up this schedule this year to not only test his team but kind of gradually increase the benchmarks to say, okay, NC State, really good team, top 15 team and top 20 team in the country. Let's just see where we are. And then Notre Dame, another step up from that. Now we can see, are we at this rung? Are we somewhere between this rung and NC State? All right, now that we've passed that test, how do we handle the literal best in the business? Dawn Staley, South Carolina dynasty, coming off a national championship, number one team in the country again this year. Where do we stack up against the best of the best? I just think, obviously, there's a lot that goes into it, and you kind of got to get lucky at times. But I think the way that Campbell has broken down this schedule, this non-conference, is playing out almost perfectly for this team right now.
And he can do that because he's got players that have played in Final Fours. He's got players that have played in Elite Eights. And he's got players that have played these ranked games on the road and at home and all of those things. And so he should be testing this team early. Like if Jamie Dixon had the schedule this year, I'd be like, he's insane. What is he doing? I'm glad that they went on the road once because that's more than they normally do, a true road game. But yeah, it wouldn't make sense for him to have this loaded of a preseason when he's going to play in a conference where every game is going to be against a ranked opponent, it seems, at least in the top half of that league. So yeah, I think it makes sense to challenge and to push. And I love that he got NC State to come to Fort Worth because you needed to win. You needed that game at home to get your confidence up, to have that crowd behind you, to will you to a victory. Notre Dame will be interesting because I imagine Notre Dame's going to travel a lot better than TCU for this one. So if there is a tilt in the fan base, it'll probably be pro-Irish. I would say, like, if you were to ask me to pick, I wouldn't pick TCU to win that game. I want to see them play very competitively. And if they do win, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I really believe in this team. I've already said Sweet 16 or bust. I'm really tempted to go Elite Eight, but I'm not going to go there yet. I got to see how the bracket plays out before I'm willing to say that. But this is a team that should be able to compete with the best in the country. I don't necessarily know that they are ready to beat the best teams in the country. I think they could be that direction by the time March rolls around. But they have all the pieces. What I loved about Thursday, before we fully move on from that game, is he started Uno Ivanovic and Agnes Eminopu. That's the first changes he's made to his starting lineup. I asked him after the game if that was, what the reasoning behind having Taylor, Big B, and Donovan Hunter come off the bench. And it was just hey, it's a long season. We know that things happen. We need to be prepared to win in different ways. We saw them go big with their lineups. We saw them go small. There was a time where Sedona was off and Aaliyah Robertson was playing, basically playing the five, and they were almost completely five out. So he's really mixing and matching and experimenting, and he said he was very purposefully doing so because he needs to be flexible when they have the opportunity. So when it's not a choice and they have to do it, that they can be successful. And I love watching kind of his tactical mind. And I think the experience of last year's chaotic and crazy and terrible as it was has really helped him understand different ways to prepare for this season when he does have depth and he does have options and he can mix and match the starters and he can mix and match the finishers. So it was a very interesting game. They absolutely dominated. I know nothing about Idaho State, but I expect them to roll Sunday afternoon in that game, and then hopefully get a little bit of rest and get ready for. I just hope TCU plays as well Friday against Notre Dame as they did against NC State, because if they play to that level and then maybe hit a few more shots that we expect them to hit, they have a chance to pull off what would still be a pretty significant upset.
It would be. I think it would be an upset. And they didn't shoot particularly well in that NC State game either. Like you mentioned, the defense carried them, especially late. So it would be nice to see them, repeat that performance, maybe take a little bit of a bigger step in the right direction. And I think, too, the other benefit of experimenting with your lineups and experimenting with your system at this point, it's almost the opposite of the Gary Patterson. If we're telling you, we're telling them.
Yeah.
Doing that little 5 out, Aaliyah at the 5, gives Notre Dame something else to prepare for. It gives South Carolina something else to prepare for that they have to spend time on, and that takes away time from preparing for the Sedona and Haley pick and roll. It takes away time from, all right, how do we defend the shooters when Haley is in the paint? or
Yeah.
Sedona has the ball down on the low block. And so just the more you add to your film at this point in the season, the more those teams have to start to work on and think about. And it takes away time from thinking about your real bread and butter just a little bit. I don't know if that gives you much of an advantage, but I think it would. Just the more you're making other teams think about, the better off you'll be in the long run, I believe.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think this team still has not played its best basketball. Madison Connor is quietly shooting 43% from three, and again, haven't really. She's had one game where we've really seen her be the Madison Connor that we know. But I think that her best games are ahead of her. Haley has been super consistent and been a great playmaker. She's still not shooting the ball particularly well. So I think that there is another level for this team to reach by the time conference play comes around. They're not going to go undefeated. I don't mind teams losing to good teams in the preseason. That's not like I don't mind even the men losing at Michigan. The way they lose matters, right? But I think that it's okay to push yourself out of your comfort zone and take some L's. I know that I asked the team about how excited they were to go to the Cayman Islands. I think they're really excited to spend that time together and just to have that opportunity to bond. I mean, there's so many unique personalities. There's so much experience. Might be the oldest team in college basketball with an average age of like 22 and a half. So even though there are a lot of new faces, there is a lot of experience on this team. This is a put-up year. And I think Mark Campbell knows it. You've got 1 year, maybe 1 year of Sedona Prince, or maybe another. Who knows? Like she seems to get more and more eligibility. You've got 1 year of Haley Van Lith. Maddie Shear, I think, is a grad transfer. I mean, there is a lot of players that this is their last opportunity. There's a lot of excitement and youth below that too. But for a lot of these women, this is it. And so I think capitalizing and maximizing their opportunities is really important. This team understands that. They seem to really like each other. They seem to play well together. There doesn't seem to be a ton of ego. And I think that is why I believe this can be such a special season for them.
Yep, and we get to see more of it this upcoming week in the Cayman Islands against Notre Dame. So looking forward to that matchup for them. That'll do it for this episode of Frogs Insider. We will be back. Maybe, I don't know, what's the plan for the Cincinnati preview this week?
I asked a couple people and got rejected because of holiday travel, but I've got some other opportunities on the list. So I will knock out a preview at some point, and we'll see when we'll post it before Saturday.
Hey, how about that?
Let's make that promise. We will have something before Saturday.
A Cincinnati preview to you, your ears, your eyes, before the Saturday matchup with the Bearcats that caps TCU's regular season. Until then, she is Melissa Treebwasser. I am Jamie Plunkett. Thank you to the Flying T Club and Dave Campbell's Texas Football, and we will talk to you next time. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.